Reflecting on my last birthday still brings a rush of emotions. It started out as any other day. Sunlight spilling into the room, soft morning greetings, and the familiar sound of Alistair making coffee in the kitchen. My husband had always made birthdays special, with everything from surprise dinners to trips, so I was accustomed to his knack for planning. But something felt different this year. There was a playful glint in his eye as he kissed me that morning and whispered, "Tonight will be one to remember." The day unfolded like any other. Calls from friends, flowers from my sister, and the usual greetings on social media. But I kept glancing at the clock, curious about what Alistair might have planned. My mind conjured up images of candlelit dinners, or even a quiet, romantic evening at home, which I would have loved. But as evening drew near, Alistair's tone grew more mysterious. He encouraged me to dress up, though he didn't give me any specifics, just a mischievous smile and a wink before disappearing upstairs. His demeanor made me laugh and wonder. What could he possibly be planning this year? What I didn't know was that this birthday would take an unexpected turn, becoming something I could never have anticipated. That night, Alistair would surprise me in a way that forever shifted how I saw our relationship. The events that unfolded were intense, and the connection we rediscovered between us changed something fundamental. I knew our marriage would never be the same, but I hadn't yet realized just how much we'd both grown, how much more there was to explore. Little did I know, my birthday would open a door to a new chapter I hadn't even known we needed. The morning began with Alistair wishing me a happy birthday, his lips warm and lingering on my forehead as I stirred awake. His tone held a quiet excitement, a kind of mischievous delight that told me he'd been planning something out of the ordinary. "You're going to love what I have planned for you," he said, pouring 2 cups of coffee and handing me mine with a knowing grin. "Should I be worried?" I teased, watching him from the corner of my eye. He laughed, giving a slight shake of his head. "You'll have to wait and see, but trust me, it'll be unforgettable." Curiosity stirred within me, even as I reminded myself not to expect too much. We'd had our fair share of birthdays together, each one special in its own way. Alistair had a knack for thoughtful surprises, trips to the coast, spa weekends, or tickets to shows he knew I'd enjoy. Yet the way he looked at me today, with a glimmer of something more, made me feel this time would be different. The day passed in a happy blur. Alistair had arranged flowers to arrive in the morning, brightening the kitchen with splashes of color. I received calls from friends, messages from family, and even a delivery of pastries from a bakery I loved, courtesy of Alistair. It was all so thoughtful, and I couldn't help but feel loved and appreciated. But as the afternoon wore on, I noticed Alistair slipping in and out of the house, his behavior both casual and deliberate. He'd check on me, then disappear into the study or make a quick phone call in the other room. I laughed to myself, imagining him putting the finishing touches on whatever plan he had in store. Should I start getting ready for dinner? I called out to him as the clock neared 5. "Yes, but no rush," he replied, popping his head into the living room with that same mysterious grin. "Just dress up a bit. Nothing too fancy." I headed upstairs, scanning my closet for something that felt just right. I decided on a simple yet elegant dress in deep blue, a color Alistair often complimented me on. It hugged my figure comfortably and had just the right hint of sophistication without being too formal. I paired it with my favorite necklace, a gold chain with a pendant he'd given me years ago. As I applied a touch of makeup, I heard footsteps outside the bathroom door. Alistair knocked softly and poked his head inside. "You look beautiful," he said, his eyes warm as he took me in. "Perfect for tonight." "Are you finally going to tell me where we're going?" I asked, meeting his gaze in the mirror. He shook his head, his smile widening. "Not yet, but I'll give you one hint. Tonight is about celebrating together." With that cryptic response, he left, leaving me both curious and increasingly excited. Whatever he had planned, I trusted him implicitly. Alistair had always known me better than I knew myself. His surprises always thoughtful, always filled with meaning. As I finished dressing, I heard the doorbell ring. I assumed it was a delivery or perhaps a friend dropping off a gift. But as I descended the stairs, I saw Alistair opening the door to reveal Edwin, his closest friend of many years. "Edwin," I greeted him, a bit surprised but genuinely pleased to see him. Edwin had been part of our lives for so long. He was practically family. But it was unusual for him to be here on a night I thought would be just for us. "Happy birthday, Grace," he said warmly, handing me a small gift. "I wouldn't miss the chance to celebrate with you." The three of us exchanged hugs, and Alistair led us into the living room, pouring each of us a glass of wine. I couldn't shake the curiosity bubbling up inside me. Edwin's presence added a new layer to the evening, something unexpected that stirred questions I didn't yet have the answers to. As we sipped our wine and chatted, I noticed Alistair and Edwin sharing quiet smiles, a look that spoke of shared secrets. I tried to join in the conversation, but my attention kept drifting to the subtle glances between them. There was an energy, a tension, that felt both mysterious and oddly thrilling. "Are you ready for your birthday surprise?" Alistair asked, setting his glass down and reaching for my hand. I took his hand, looking from him to Edwin and back again. "Yes, I think so." He smiled, his gaze warm and full of anticipation. "Then let's get started." With that, Alistair led me toward the living room, where candles were lit, casting a warm glow across the room. The music, soft and mellow, played in the background, setting a relaxed yet intimate mood. I felt my heart rate quicken, a sense of excitement and curiosity building with each step. And as Alistair guided me into the room, with Edwin close by, I realized that whatever was about to unfold would be unlike any birthday celebration I'd experienced before. As Alistair and I settled on the couch, I noticed Edwin sitting across from us, watching with a quiet intensity that felt both comforting and intriguing. Edwin had always been a grounding presence, a friend with a calm demeanor and a thoughtful approach to everything. But tonight, there was something different in the way he looked at us, as if he, too, was part of Alistair's plan. After a few minutes of casual conversation, Alistair turned to me, his expression softened by the candlelight. "Grace, tonight's about trust and connection. I wanted this evening to be a special memory for us." I looked at him, puzzled but curious. "And how does Edwin fit into this?" Alistair exchanged a glance with Edwin, who nodded slightly, then turned back to me. "Edwin has been by our side for so many years. Tonight, I wanted him to join us, not as a third wheel, but as part of our celebration. We've both been close to him, and I thought it might be meaningful to share this evening together." The words hung in the air, charged with a depth I hadn't expected. Edwin's presence, the warmth of Alistair's gaze, the sense of intimacy in the room, it all came together in a way that was both surprising and oddly reassuring. I found myself drawn to the idea, even as I tried to understand its meaning. "Do you trust me, Grace?" Alistair asked, his hand reaching out to cover mine. I nodded, my heart beating a little faster. "Yes, of course." Alistair leaned in, pressing a soft kiss to my forehead, his voice barely above a whisper. "Then let's enjoy this night together, fully and openly." I felt a thrill of anticipation mixed with curiosity as I looked from Alistair to Edwin. Whatever the evening held, I knew one thing for certain. It was going to be unforgettable. The room was filled with a quiet, expectant energy as we sat together, the three of us, bathed in the warm glow of the candlelight. Alistair poured more wine, and as he refilled my glass, he held my gaze a little longer than usual, a slight smile playing at his lips. I was intrigued, but tried to stay grounded, focusing on the warmth of his hand on mine, the sense of intimacy between us. Edwin seemed content to observe, his expression calm, though there was an unmistakable spark of interest in his eyes. He had always been part of our lives, someone we trusted deeply, but seeing him here now, seated close to us on this night of celebration, felt almost surreal. Alistair turned to me, his voice gentle and sincere. "Grace, this evening is about creating something special, something new between us. I wanted to bring you a surprise that wasn't just about us, but about connection and trust. That's why I asked Edwin to join us." I took a sip of wine, trying to process his words. A mix of excitement and curiosity filled me as I considered the unusual dynamic we were embracing tonight. It wasn't like Alistair to introduce such an unexpected twist, but the depth of his gaze reassured me. As if sensing my thoughts, Edwin spoke softly. "Grace, this is all at your pace. I'm here to support whatever feels right to you." His voice was warm, calm, and I felt a deep sense of trust, both in him and in Alistair. Alistair squeezed my hand gently, his gaze never leaving mine. "Whatever you feel comfortable with, Grace, this night is for you." The trust in his words, the care in his tone, settled my mind. I felt safe, surrounded by the warmth and love of two people who had shared my life in their own ways. And with that reassurance, I allowed myself to relax, to let go of the questions spinning in my mind, and simply enjoy the moment. As the night progressed, we laughed, shared stories, and reminisced about memories we'd made over the years. Edwin added his own memories to the mix, stories of our shared adventures and quieter times. Each tale brought us closer, strengthening the bond that had already been built through years of friendship and trust. At one point, Alistair turned on the stereo, playing soft, soothing music that filled the room, enhancing the intimacy of the moment. He reached out, pulling me close, and we swayed gently to the music, lost in each other's presence. Edwin watched us with a soft smile, a silent presence who added to the feeling of being cherished, respected, and supported. As the evening deepened, I felt a profound sense of gratitude for the love and connection we were sharing. Alistair's plan had been unconventional, but I understood now that it was a reflection of his love, a desire to give me a gift that went beyond material things, a gift that was rooted in trust, love, and mutual respect. By the time the night came to an end, I knew this was a birthday I would never forget. A night that had opened my eyes to the depth of connection I shared with Alistair and the friendships that had enriched our lives. As we continued to enjoy each other's company, a subtle tension began to build in the room. It wasn't uncomfortable or overwhelming. If anything, it felt natural, an extension of the affection and trust that had always been present between us. I couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement, a kind of anticipation that made my heart beat a little faster. Alistair's gaze softened as he looked at me, his eyes filled with an emotion I couldn't quite place. It was as if he was seeing me in a new light, a look that made me feel cherished and desired in a way I hadn't expected. Edwin, too, seemed to be caught in the moment, his attention focused on us, his expression a mix of admiration and respect. For a brief moment, I felt self-conscious, unsure of how to navigate this unexpected situation. But Alistair reached for my hand, his touch gentle and reassuring. "Grace," he murmured, his voice a comforting presence. "This night is about celebrating you, about honoring everything that makes you special. There's no pressure, no expectations. Just let yourself feel what's here." His words washed over me, calming the fluttering in my chest and grounding me in the present moment. I glanced at Edwin, who gave me a small, encouraging smile, as if to say he understood. The two of them created a circle of warmth and support, a space where I felt completely safe, completely free to explore this new experience. As I found myself relaxing into the dynamic, allowing myself to be fully present, to embrace the excitement and curiosity that had been growing since the evening began. Alistair and Edwin shared stories and laughter, each taking turns making me feel like the center of their attention. It was a feeling I hadn't experienced in years, a reminder of how loved and valued I was. We continued to sway to the music, and at one point, Alistair pulled me close, wrapping his arms around me as he whispered, "You're so beautiful tonight, Grace. I love seeing you happy." His words filled me with a warmth that spread through my entire being. I felt cherished, loved, and profoundly connected to him in that moment. Edwin joined us, his presence adding to the sense of unity that filled the room. There was no jealousy, no competition, just an atmosphere of mutual respect and admiration. It felt surreal, but also incredibly natural, as if this was something we'd been building toward for years, without even realizing it. The connection between us was palpable, a shared understanding that went beyond words. I felt myself letting go, allowing the evening to unfold as it would, trusting in the love and support of the two people who had become the most important figures in my life. As the tension continued to build, I realized that Alistair's plan had been more than just a birthday surprise. It had been a gift of trust, a reminder of the strength of our relationship and the depth of our connection. I felt incredibly lucky to have a husband who understood me so deeply, who was willing to create a space where I could explore, grow, and feel loved in ways I hadn't imagined. When the song ended, we stood together in silence, each of us lost in our thoughts. Alistair took my hand, leading me to sit back down on the couch, with Edwin joining us on the other side. The three of us shared a quiet moment, simply enjoying each other's presence, the soft hum of the music, and the warmth of the candlelight casting gentle shadows around the room. Alistair placed his hand over mine, his touch gentle and reassuring. "Grace," he began, his voice soft, "I want you to know how much you mean to me, how grateful I am to share this life with you. Tonight was about showing you that love goes beyond words, that it's a shared experience, a connection that deepens with time." I felt my eyes fill with tears as I listened to his words, my heart swelling with love and gratitude. He had given me a gift that went beyond material things, a gift that was rooted in the depth of our relationship, the trust and understanding that had grown between us over the years. Edwin reached out, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder. "Grace, you're an incredible person. Being here with you, seeing the love you and Alistair share, it's a privilege." The sincerity in his voice touched me deeply, and I felt a sense of connection to both of them that went beyond friendship, beyond love. It was as if we had all crossed an invisible threshold, entering a new phase of our relationships, one that was defined by trust, respect, and a shared understanding. I looked from Alistair to Edwin, my heart full of gratitude for the two people who had become my foundation. This night had been a journey of discovery, a chance to explore the depth of connection that was possible when we allowed ourselves to be vulnerable, to open up to new experiences and embrace the unknown. The three of us sat together, talking softly, sharing stories and memories that brought us closer, reminding us of the journey we had taken to arrive at this moment. It was a celebration of love, friendship, and the bonds that had grown between us over the years. As the night wore on, I felt a profound sense of peace, a contentment that came from knowing I was surrounded by people who truly understood me, who loved and respected me for who I was. This birthday had been unlike any other, a reminder that life is full of surprises, that love is a journey of discovery, and that true connection goes beyond the ordinary. Waking up the next morning, I felt a sense of calm and fulfillment. Alistair was already up, and I could hear the soft clinking of dishes as he prepared breakfast in the kitchen. I lay in bed for a moment, reflecting on the events of the previous night, feeling a deep sense of gratitude for the love and connection we had shared. When I joined him in the kitchen, he greeted me with a warm smile, handing me a cup of coffee and wrapping his arms around me. "Happy morning after your birthday," he said, his voice filled with affection. I laughed, leaning into his embrace. Thank you, Alistair. Last night was, well, it was everything I didn't expect, but everything I didn't know I needed. He looked at me, his expression soft. I'm glad you enjoyed it, Grace. That's all I wanted, to give you a birthday you'd never forget, something that would remind us both of the depth of our connection. We spent the morning together, reminiscing about the night, sharing quiet moments and affectionate gestures that underscored the bond between us. I felt a renewed sense of appreciation for Alistair, for the love and trust he had shown me, and for the gift of connection that we had shared. Edwin had left early in the morning, but he had left behind a note, thanking us for allowing him to be part of such a special evening. His words were filled with warmth and gratitude, a reminder of the friendship that had always been the foundation of our relationship. As I sipped my coffee, I felt a sense of peace, a belief that this experience had strengthened our marriage in ways I hadn't anticipated. It had brought us closer, deepening our connection and reminding us of the love that had always been there, even if it had been hidden beneath the routines of everyday life. And as I looked at Alistair, I knew that this birthday had been a turning point, a celebration of love, trust, and the power of connection. After Edwin left that morning, I felt the quiet weight of his absence in the house, a reminder of the previous night and the unique experience we had shared together. It was strange, almost surreal, to think back on the way we had celebrated. I never would have thought that my husband's idea of a perfect birthday surprise would involve something so intimate, so profoundly rooted in trust and connection. Yet, as I moved through the day, I found myself reflecting on the emotions that had surfaced during those quiet, candlelit hours. What struck me the most was the sense of peace I had felt, the undeniable feeling that I was exactly where I was meant to be, surrounded by people who truly cared for me. Alistair's plan had shown me that our relationship wasn't bound by convention or routine. It was a living, evolving connection that could grow in unexpected ways. Alistair seemed content too, smiling more than usual, his gestures tender and thoughtful. He'd touch my shoulder as he passed by, pause to kiss my forehead, or stop to say something small but affectionate that made me feel deeply loved and appreciated. We didn't need to talk about every detail of what we had experienced. The peace and unity between us was enough, a silent affirmation that we were both grateful for the way the night had unfolded. A few days later, I found myself sitting in the living room, thumbing through a photo album of memories from past birthdays, anniversaries, and vacations. Each photo was a testament to the life Alistair and I had built together, to the love that had weathered decades of changes and challenges. And yet, in that moment, I realized that the love we shared now was different, deeper, shaped by the journey we had taken together and the trust that had grown between us. When Alistair joined me, he wrapped an arm around my shoulder, and we looked through the photos together, sharing stories and laughing at the memories. As we reached the end of the album, he looked at me with a gentle smile. "Grace," he began, his tone thoughtful, "last night was something I never thought we'd do. But I have to say, it made me realize how much I love you, how much I still want to experience life with you, no matter where it takes us." His words touched me deeply, and I felt tears welling up in my eyes. We sat together in silence, letting the emotions wash over us, a reminder that love, true love, is about being open, being willing to grow and change together. In the days that followed, Alistair and I entered a new chapter in our relationship. It was as if a door had opened, allowing us to explore parts of ourselves that had been quietly waiting, hidden beneath the layers of daily life and routine. I felt a renewed sense of intimacy with him, a connection that was built on mutual trust and a willingness to embrace the unknown. We began spending more time together, taking long walks in the nearby park or enjoying quiet evenings on the back porch. These simple moments felt different now, infused with a new kind of openness that made each interaction feel meaningful, intentional. Alistair would often reach for my hand as we walked, his touch gentle yet filled with a warmth that reminded me of why I had fallen in love with him all those years ago. One evening, as we sat together watching the sunset, he turned to me, his eyes reflecting the fading light. "Grace, I want us to keep this connection alive. I don't want us to ever fall back into the routine of taking each other for granted. You mean too much to me." I felt a surge of gratitude as I listened to his words, realizing that he had been changed by the experience just as much as I had. We had always been close, but this was something more. A shared understanding that love is not static, that it requires nurturing and growth to truly thrive. As we sat in the twilight, sharing our hopes for the future, I felt a quiet joy, a belief that we were moving forward together, not just as partners, but as individuals who respected and cherished each other's dreams and desires. This new chapter was one of discovery, a journey of learning to see each other in a new light, to appreciate the depth and beauty of our relationship. As the weeks passed, I couldn't help but wonder if that unforgettable birthday night was a one-time experience or the beginning of something new for us. Alistair seemed to sense my thoughts, and one evening as we sat on the couch, he broached the subject with a thoughtful look. "Grace," he began, taking my hand in his, "have you thought about that night? I mean, would you want to do something like that again?" His question hung in the air, and I could feel my heart beating a little faster as I considered his words. It was something I had thought about, the memory of that night replaying in my mind whenever I had a quiet moment to reflect. But now that he had voiced the question, it felt real, tangible. "I have thought about it," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "It's crossed my mind more than once." Alistair smiled, his gaze filled with warmth and understanding. "I feel the same way. There was something about that experience. It brought us closer, in a way I hadn't expected, but I don't want to push you into anything you're not comfortable with." His openness, his willingness to give me space and freedom, made me feel safe, loved. I took a deep breath, considering his words, and I realized that I trusted him completely, that whatever path we chose to explore, it would be a journey we took together, hand in hand. "I think I'd be open to exploring more, as long as it's something we both want," I replied, meeting his gaze with a sense of certainty. With that decision, I felt a surge of excitement, a belief that our relationship was growing, evolving, into something more profound, more connected. We didn't need to rush, didn't need to define every step of the journey ahead. What mattered was that we were united in our desire to keep the love alive, to continue nurturing the bond that had been built on years of trust, laughter, and shared memories. In the months that followed, Alistair and I focused on rebuilding our connection, creating new experiences that deepened our bond. We took up new hobbies, finding joy in learning and exploring together, whether it was cooking classes, dancing, or trying new activities that allowed us to discover different sides of each other. One of the most rewarding aspects of this journey was the conversations we shared. Honest, open discussions that allowed us to connect on a level we hadn't before. We made it a habit to set aside time each week to talk, to share our thoughts and feelings, creating a safe space where we could be vulnerable without fear or judgment. During one of these conversations, Alistair looked at me, his expression thoughtful. "Grace, I feel like we're rediscovering each other. It's like I'm falling in love with you all over again." His words filled me with a warmth that was both familiar and new, a reminder that love is a journey, a constant choice to see each other with fresh eyes. We had walked this path together, learning, growing, and deepening our connection with each step. And as we moved forward, I felt a renewed sense of commitment, a belief that we would continue to find joy and meaning in each other's presence. On weekends, we'd go on small adventures, exploring nearby towns, visiting museums, or simply enjoying the beauty of nature. Each outing was a reminder of the love we shared, a love that had been strengthened and enriched by our willingness to embrace change, to trust each other completely. Reflecting on that unforgettable birthday and the months that followed, I felt a deep sense of gratitude for the life Alistair and I had built together. That night had been more than a surprise. It had been a catalyst for change, a moment that pushed us to re-examine our relationship and to open our hearts to new possibilities. Our love had grown, becoming something richer, more resilient, shaped by the experiences we had shared and the trust we had nurtured. I looked at Alistair, who was sitting beside me, his face softened by the afternoon light, and I felt a profound sense of peace. "Thank you," I whispered, reaching for his hand. "For everything." He looked at me, his eyes filled with understanding. "No, Grace, thank you. You're the love of my life, my partner in every sense. I wouldn't want this journey with anyone else." And in that quiet moment, I realized that love isn't just about passion or excitement. It's about the commitment to grow together, to weather life's storms side by side, to find joy in the small, everyday moments that make up a life. Our love story was far from over, and as we continued our journey together, I knew that we would face whatever lay ahead with open hearts and unbreakable trust. The birthday surprise had been only the beginning, a spark that rekindled our love, bringing us closer than ever before. And as we moved forward, hand in hand, I felt a sense of hope, a belief that the best was yet to come. It happened in an instant, but it felt like the world slowed down. I was heading toward the laundry room carrying a stack of folded towels when Zachary appeared from the bathroom, a towel slung low around his hips, steam rising from his skin. "Hey, Charlotte," he said casually, stepping aside to let me pass. I glanced at him briefly, muttering a polite, "Hi," before trying to focus on the task at hand. But then it happened. The knot of his towel slipped, and before either of us could react, it dropped to the floor. He froze, and so did I. My gaze flickered, just for a second, a reflex I couldn't stop, and in that moment, I saw him in a way I was never supposed to. He started, his voice breaking the silence as he bent to grab the towel. "I didn't see anything," I blurted out, turning away so fast that I nearly dropped the towels I was holding. "Right," he said, his voice strained. "Sorry about that." By the time I dared to look back, he had wrapped the towel around himself again, his cheeks as red as mine probably were. Neither of us said anything else, but the air between us felt heavier, like we'd crossed a line we couldn't uncross. It was an accident, just a fleeting, awkward moment. But as I walked away, my heart racing and my skin flushed, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. Life with Richard had always been predictable. Our marriage wasn't a love story. It was a partnership, practical and stable. He was a businessman through and through, his focus always on the next deal, the next client, the next opportunity. I'd admired that about him at first, his drive, his ambition. But over time, it left little room for us. The house was large and modern, perched on the edge of the countryside. Its sleek lines and polished surfaces were more Richard's taste than mine, but I made it a home as best as I could. Most days, though, it felt too big, too quiet. Richard spent more time at work than here, and when he was home, he was usually buried in emails or conference calls. Zachary moved in shortly after finishing college. At 24, he was in that uncertain stage of life, searching for direction while trying to figure out who he was. Richard insisted he stay with us until he got on his feet, though I suspected it had more to do with control than concern. Richard had always been critical of Zachary, pushing him toward paths that didn't fit, trying to mold him into the son he wanted rather than the one he had. I hadn't spent much time around Zachary before he moved in. He'd lived with his mother, Karen, on the other side of the country for most of his life. When Richard and I married, Zachary was a quiet teenager who barely looked up from his phone long enough to say hello. But the man who walked through the door that day was someone entirely different. Zachary was tall and broad-shouldered, with an easy confidence that belied the uncertainty of his circumstances. His dark hair was perpetually tousled, and his blue eyes had a way of looking right through you, like he could see things you didn't want him to. At first, our interactions were polite but distant. He spent most of his time in his room or out with friends, and I didn't press him to engage. But as the weeks went on, he started spending more time around the house, finding reasons to linger in the kitchen while I cooked, or joining me in the living room while I read. "Your garden is impressive," he said one afternoon, leaning against the patio door as I tended to the roses. "Thank you," I replied, glancing up at him. "It's been a lot of work, but it's worth it." He stepped outside, squinting against the sunlight. "Do you do all of this yourself?" "Mostly," I said, brushing dirt off my gloves. "Richard isn't exactly the gardening type," Zachary smirked. "I can't imagine him getting his hands dirty." I laughed softly, surprised by how easily he made me smile. "That's not his style." It was small moments like that, little exchanges that didn't seem like much at the time, that began to shift something between us. I started noticing things I hadn't before. The way he moved through the house, the sound of his laughter, the way his presence filled the space in a way that Richard's never did. And then there were the times I'd catch him looking at me. Quick glances that lingered a beat too long before he looked away. The day of the towel incident was like any other. I had spent the morning tidying up and sorting laundry, my usual routine when Richard was at the office. I wasn't expecting Zachary to be home. He'd mentioned something about meeting a friend for lunch. I was heading toward the laundry room when the bathroom door opened, and he stepped out, a cloud of steam following him. His towel was slung low around his hips, his skin still damp from the shower. "Hey, Charlotte," he said casually as if nothing was out of the ordinary. "Hi," I replied, averting my eyes as I moved past him, and then it happened. The towel slipped, the knot unraveling, and before either of us could react, it fell to the floor. For a moment, neither of us moved. Zachary froze, his eyes wide, and I felt my cheeks flush as I realized what had just happened. Sorry," he stammered, bending down to grab the towel. "I didn't see anything," I blurted out, though the heat rising in my face betrayed me. "Right," he said, his voice strained as he wrapped the towel around himself again. I hurried away, my heart racing, and my thoughts a jumble of embarrassment and something else I didn't want to name. For the rest of the day, I couldn't stop replaying the moment in my head. It was just an accident, I told myself, a fleeting, awkward moment that meant nothing. But the tension that lingered in the air said otherwise. When I saw him later that evening, sitting on the couch with his laptop, he looked up and gave me a small, tentative smile. I returned it, though my heart fluttered in a way that felt dangerous. We didn't speak about what had happened, but the unspoken awareness between us was impossible to ignore. In the days that followed, the dynamic between us shifted. Our conversations grew longer, our glances more frequent. There was a new weight to the air whenever we were alone, a quiet tension that neither of us acknowledged but both of us felt. Richard remained oblivious, too caught up in his work to notice the subtle changes in the house. But I noticed. And so did Zachary. The incident with the towel might have been an accident, but the weight of it lingered in every interaction between us. Zachary and I had shared an awkward moment, but it was more than that. It had ignited something neither of us could name, but both of us could feel. In the days that followed, the tension between us grew. It wasn't something we spoke about, but it was there, in the way his gaze lingered when we passed each other, in the charged silence that hung in the air when we found ourselves alone. I told myself it was nothing, a silly infatuation born out of loneliness and too much time spent together. But deep down, I knew better. It happened for the first time one evening. Richard was working late, as usual, and the house was quiet. I was in the kitchen, tidying up after dinner, when Zachary walked in. He leaned against the counter, watching me with an intensity that made my hands tremble. "You don't have to do everything yourself, you know," he said, his voice softer than usual. I glanced at him, forcing a smile. "It keeps me busy." He stepped closer, his expression unreadable. "You're always busy." "Someone has to be," I replied, trying to keep my tone light. Zachary didn't respond immediately. Instead, he reached out, taking the dish towel from my hands. His fingers brushed mine, and the contact sent a jolt through me. "You never let anyone take care of you," he said quietly. His words caught me off guard, and I turned to face him, my chest tightening. "Zachary, But I couldn't finish the sentence. His gaze held mine, steady and unrelenting, and in that moment, everything else faded away. The first kiss was tentative, a quiet question neither of us dared to speak aloud. His lips brushed mine, soft and hesitant, and for a moment I froze. But then I kissed him back and the floodgates opened. We pulled apart after a moment, both of us breathing heavily. "This is wrong," I whispered, my voice trembling. "I know," he replied, his forehead resting against mine. "But I can't stop." Neither could I. What started as stolen moments in the kitchen quickly spiraled into something neither of us could control. We were careful at first, stealing glances and fleeting touches when no one else was around. But as the weeks went on, the intensity of our connection grew, and so did the risks we were willing to take. One afternoon, while Richard was at a client meeting, Zachary found me in the garden. I was pruning roses, the warm sun beating down on my back, when he appeared behind me. "You're always out here," he said, his voice breaking the stillness. "It's peaceful," I replied without turning around. Zachary stepped closer, his shadow falling over me. "You're beautiful out here," he said softly. I turned to face him, my breath catching as I saw the way he was looking at me, like I was the only thing in the world that mattered. "Zachary, we shouldn't." But before I could finish, he pulled me into his arms, his lips capturing mine in a kiss that left me breathless. The secrecy of our relationship only added to its intensity. We found ways to be together without raising suspicion. Quiet moments in the library, whispered conversations in the kitchen, fleeting touches in the garden. Every stolen moment felt like a rebellion against the roles we were supposed to play, a defiance of the rules that bound us. But the risks were always there, lurking in the background. One evening, as we sat in the living room, the sound of Richard's car pulling into the driveway sent a jolt of panic through both of us. "Go," I whispered, pushing Zachary toward the hallway. He slipped out just as the front door opened, and I quickly composed myself, pretending to read a book. "Miranda," Richard said as he walked in, his tone brisk. "Where's Zachary?" "In his room, I think," I replied, forcing a casual smile. Richard frowned but didn't press further, his attention already shifting to his laptop. The cracks in our secret began to show soon after. It started with small things. Richard's puzzled glances when he noticed Zachary and me talking in hushed tones, the way he lingered in doorways as if trying to catch something we weren't saying. Then there was Noah, Zachary's best friend, who had a way of showing up unannounced. "You've been spending a lot of time at home," Noah remarked one afternoon, his tone light but his gaze sharp. "Just helping out around the house." Zachary replied smoothly. Noah raised an eyebrow, his smirk faint. "Must be nice." The remark seemed innocuous, but the way his eyes flicked between us left me uneasy. The pressure of keeping our secret began to take its toll. One night, as we sat in the library, Zachary reached for my hand, his expression pained. "We can't keep hiding forever," he said. I shook my head, tears pricking at the corners of my eyes. "There's no other way." "There has to be," he insisted. "I'm not going to lose you, Charlotte." The conviction in his voice both comforted and terrified me. Our relationship was a delicate balancing act, one misstep away from disaster. But even as the risks grew, so did my feelings for him. I knew it couldn't last. But I also knew I couldn't let go. Secrets are heavy things, and as much as I tried to keep ours hidden, it began to seep into the cracks of our lives. The weight of what Zachary and I were doing wasn't just emotional. It was practical, tangible, a constant presence in the house. And the closer others got, the more I felt the walls closing in. The first complication came in the form of Noah, Zachary's best friend. Noah had a knack for showing up unannounced, his sharp wit and easy smile masking a subtle nosiness that made me uneasy. He seemed to have a sixth sense for tension, and every time he was in the house, I felt like I was walking on glass. One afternoon, I was in the kitchen preparing lunch when Noah wandered in, his usual air of casual charm surrounding him. "Smells good in here," he said, leaning against the counter. "Thank you," I replied, keeping my tone polite. He picked up an apple from the fruit bowl, tossing it in the air before taking a bite. "Zach's been spending a lot of time at home lately," he remarked, his gaze flicking to me. "He's helping me with some projects," I said, forcing a smile. "Nice of him," Noah said, his tone light but his eyes sharp. "Guess it's good to have some company with Richard gone so much." The comment sent a jolt through me, but I kept my expression neutral. "It's a big house," I replied. "Company is always nice." Noah studied me for a moment longer before grinning. "Well, I hope he's not slacking off too much. Zach's always been good at finding distractions." I laughed lightly, but the unease in my chest didn't fade. Then there was Cynthia, one of Richard's colleagues who had taken an unexpected interest in Zachary. Cynthia was everything I wasn't: young, ambitious, and unapologetically bold. She worked closely with Richard, often attending events and meetings with him, and she seemed to delight in making herself part of his world. "Zachary's quite charming, isn't he?" she remarked one evening during a dinner party at our house. I glanced at her, surprised by the comment. "He is," I replied carefully. She sipped her wine, her eyes glinting with amusement. "I think he's wasted sitting around here. Someone like him should be out there, making his mark." "I'm sure he'll find his way," I said, my tone clipped. Cynthia leaned closer, lowering her voice. "I can see where he gets it from. You've got quite the presence yourself, Charlotte." Her words sent a chill down my spine, and I excused myself as soon as I could. The pressure of keeping our secret grew with each passing day. Little things began to slip. Glances held too long, touches that lingered, the way Zachary's voice softened when he spoke to me. One evening, as I was tidying up the living room, Richard walked in unexpectedly. "You've been distracted lately," he said, his tone casual but his eyes watchful. "I've just been busy," I replied, avoiding his gaze. "Too busy to join me for dinner the other night?" he pressed. "I wasn't feeling well," I lied, my stomach twisting under his scrutiny. Richard studied me for a moment before nodding. "Well, let me know if there's anything I can do." His words seemed kind on the surface, but the edge in his tone left me unsettled. The breaking point came when Noah and Cynthia crossed paths at the house. It was a Saturday afternoon, and I was in the garden pruning roses when I heard their voices drifting from the patio. "Zach's been spending a lot of time here," Noah was saying, his tone casual but probing. "He's helping out around the house," Cynthia replied, her voice light, "and keeping Charlotte company, from what I hear." My heart stopped, and I froze, straining to hear their conversation. "That's interesting," Noah said, his tone shifting slightly. "They do seem close." "Don't read too much into it," Cynthia replied with a laugh. "Charlotte's just lonely. Richard's never around." Their words hung in the air, heavy with implication, and I felt a cold sweat break out on my skin. That evening, as Zachary and I sat in the library, I told him about what I'd overheard. "They're starting to notice," I said, my voice trembling. "Let them," Zachary replied, his tone firm. "They don't know anything. They're guessing, and it's only a matter of time before they figure it out," I said, tears pricking at the corners of my eyes. Zachary took my hand, his gaze steady. "We'll deal with it when it happens. I'm not letting them take this away from us." His confidence was reassuring, but the knot of fear in my chest refused to ease. The next week, Richard confronted me. "I got a call from Cynthia," he said, as he stood in the doorway of our bedroom, his arms crossed. "What about?" I asked, my heart racing. "She said there's been talk about you and Zachary," Richard said, his tone calm but cold. "Talk?" I repeated, feigning confusion. "People are saying you're too close," he said, his eyes narrowing. "That's ridiculous," I said quickly. "Zachary is your son. I've only ever tried to help him." Richard stepped closer, his gaze piercing. "Are you sure about that, Charlotte?" My breath caught, but I forced myself to hold his gaze. "Yes." The silence between us was suffocating, but eventually, Richard nodded. "Good, because if I find out otherwise, there will be consequences." His words sent a shiver down my spine, and as he walked away, I felt the weight of his warning settle heavily on my shoulders. The pressure was mounting, and I knew it was only a matter of time before everything came crashing down. Noah's intuition, Cynthia's prying, Richard's suspicion. It all felt like a storm gathering on the horizon, and I wasn't sure if we could survive it. But even as the risks grew, so did my feelings for Zachary. And no matter how dangerous it became, I couldn't bring myself to let him go. By the time the storm finally broke, I could feel it brewing in every corner of the house. The tension was unbearable, thick enough to suffocate. It wasn't just the glances Richard was beginning to cast my way, or the subtle, loaded remarks from Cynthia and Noah. It was the way Zachary and I were fraying under the pressure. Secrets like ours don't stay hidden for long. It started with Richard's sudden interest in being home. He began coming home earlier than usual, often appearing in the kitchen or living room at odd hours, claiming he wanted to spend more time with his family. But his presence wasn't warm or comforting. It was calculated. I could feel his eyes on me, watching for cracks in my composure, waiting for me to slip. One evening, as I was setting the table for dinner, Richard walked in and leaned against the counter. "Zachary hasn't been around much today," he remarked, his tone casual but probing. "He went into town to run errands," I replied, keeping my voice even. "Funny how he seems to disappear when I'm home," Richard said, his gaze sharp. I froze for a fraction of a second before forcing myself to continue arranging the silverware. "I'm sure that's just a coincidence," Richard hummed thoughtfully, his expression unreadable. "Coincidences have a way of piling up." The next blow came from Noah. He showed up late one evening, unannounced as usual, but this time his demeanor was different. He wasn't his usual charming, carefree self. Instead, he seemed tense, his eyes darting around the house as though searching for something. "Is Zach here?" he asked as I opened the door. "He's in his room," I said cautiously. Noah nodded, stepping inside. "Mind if I wait for him?" "Of course not," I said, though my chest tightened. As Noah sat in the living room, his gaze flicked to me. "You know, Charlotte, you've been good for Zach. He seems happier since moving in." "Thank you," I said, my voice steady despite the unease creeping through me. "But sometimes," Noah continued, leaning back on the couch, "I wonder if it's you he's staying here for, and not his dad." The air in the room felt like it had been sucked out, and I struggled to maintain my composure. "What are you implying, Noah?" He smiled faintly, but there was no warmth in it. "Just an observation. Zach talks about you a lot, more than I'd expect." Before I could respond, Zachary appeared at the top of the stairs. "Noah," he said sharply, his tone warning. Noah looked up, his smirk widening. "Hey, man. Just catching up with Charlotte." "Let's go," Zachary said, his jaw tight. As they left, I sank onto the couch, my hands trembling. Things came to a head when Richard finally confronted me. It was late, and I was in the library, pretending to read while my mind raced with worry. Richard walked in, his footsteps heavy, and shut the door behind him. "We need to talk," he said, his voice cold. I set the book down, my heart pounding. "What's this about?" He stepped closer, his eyes dark with suspicion. "Cynthia and Noah have been saying some interesting things about you and Zachary." "Richard, you're not seriously listening to them, are you?" I said, feigning indignation. "You tell me," he snapped, his voice rising. "Are they lying, or is there something going on between you and my son?" I stood, my chest tightening. "How dare you accuse me of something like that?" "Don't play innocent, Charlotte," he growled. "I see the way he looks at you, and the way you look at him." My breath caught, but I forced myself to hold his gaze. "You're paranoid. Maybe if you spent more time paying attention to this family instead of your business, you wouldn't be jumping to ridiculous conclusions." Richard's face twisted with anger, but before he could respond, the door opened, and Zachary stepped inside. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice steady but tense. "Your father seems to think there's something inappropriate happening between us," I said, my voice trembling. Zachary's eyes flicked to Richard, his expression hardening. "That's ridiculous." "Is it?" Richard challenged, stepping toward him. "You've been acting strange for months, both of you. What am I supposed to think?" "You're supposed to trust your wife," Zachary shot back, "but clearly you'd rather believe gossip." The room was thick with tension, and for a moment, none of us spoke. Then Richard turned to me, his eyes cold. "If I find out there's any truth to this, Charlotte, you'll regret it." He stormed out, leaving Zachary and me alone. I sank into the chair, my hands shaking as Zachary knelt in front of me. "This can't go on," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "We'll figure it out," he said, his voice firm. "I won't let him do this to you." "He's going to find out," I said, my voice breaking. "And when he does..." Zachary cupped my face in his hands, his gaze steady. "Let him. I don't care anymore. I'm not going to lose you." His words were both comforting and terrifying, and as he pulled me into his arms, I knew we were running out of time. The next day, Richard announced that he was taking a week off work, a rare occurrence that sent a jolt of panic through me. "Time to focus on what's important," he said, his gaze lingering on me as he spoke. I knew what he meant. He was going to watch us, wait for us to slip. And when we did, there would be no turning back. The week that followed was a quiet war, fought in the halls of the house. Richard's presence was suffocating, his every move calculated to keep me on edge. He spent his days shadowing us, his eyes sharp and his questions pointed. Every interaction with Zachary felt like a minefield, every word a potential spark that could ignite the tension simmering beneath the surface. The breaking point came late one evening. Richard had retired to his office, claiming he needed to review some documents. I was in the kitchen, staring blankly at a cup of tea I hadn't touched, when Zachary appeared. He didn't speak at first, but the weight of his presence was enough to draw my attention. "We can't keep doing this," I said quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. Zachary stepped closer, his expression resolute. "I'm not letting him control you like this." "He's your father," I said, my voice trembling. "He stopped being my father the moment he chose power over family," Zachary replied, his tone sharp. Before I could respond, the sound of footsteps echoed down the hall. Richard appeared in the doorway, his gaze flicking between us. "What's going on here?" he asked, his voice calm but deadly. "Nothing," I said quickly, stepping back. Richard's eyes narrowed. "Is that so? Because it doesn't look like nothing." "Maybe you should ask yourself why you're so paranoid," Zachary said, his voice steady but laced with anger. Richard turned to him, his expression darkening. "Watch your tone." "Or what?" Zachary challenged, stepping forward. "You'll blame her for your failures again? That's all you ever do, isn't it? Blame everyone else for what you've ruined." "Enough," Richard barked, his voice echoing through the kitchen. "You think I don't see what's going on here? You think I'm blind?" The silence that followed was deafening. I stepped between them, my hands trembling. "Richard, please." "Don't," he snapped, his gaze burning into me. "Don't you dare defend him." Zachary grabbed my arm, pulling me behind him. "She doesn't need to defend me. You're the one who's wrong here." "Get out of my house," Richard said, his voice low and venomous. Zachary replied, his tone defiant. "This is my family, my home," Richard said, his voice rising. "And I will not let you destroy it." "You already did?" Zachary shot back. "Long before I came back." The words hung in the air, and for a moment none of us spoke. Then Richard turned to me, his expression hard. "You have a choice to make, Charlotte," he said coldly. "Him or me." My heart pounded as I looked between them, the weight of the decision pressing down on me. I knew that no matter what I chose, everything would change. "I can't do this anymore," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "I won't live like this." Without another word, I turned and walked away, leaving behind the life I had built for the uncertain future that lay ahead. The night I walked away, the air outside was cold and biting. I didn't know where I was going, only that I couldn't stay in that house another moment. Zachary followed silently, his footsteps steady behind me as we left everything we knew behind. We didn't speak until we reached the car. I stood there, my breath visible in the night air, my hands trembling as I clutched my coat tightly around me. "You don't have to do this," Zachary said softly, his voice breaking the silence. I turned to him, tears spilling down my cheeks. "What choice do I have? Staying means pretending that everything is fine when it's not. I can't keep lying, Zachary. Not to him, not to myself." He nodded, his jaw tightening. "Then we'll figure it out. Together." I didn't respond, but I let him guide me into the passenger seat. The road ahead was dark and uncertain, but for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. The days that followed were a blur. We rented a small cabin on the outskirts of town, a place where no one would think to look for us. The cabin was modest, with creaky floors and mismatched furniture, but it felt like a refuge, a space untouched by the chaos we had left behind. Zachary threw himself into finding work, his determination unwavering. I spent my days trying to piece together a sense of normalcy, but the weight of what I had done hung over me like a shadow. One evening, as we sat on the couch, Zachary reached for my hand. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice gentle. I shook my head, unable to meet his gaze. "I don't know if I'll ever be okay again." He squeezed my hand, his grip firm. You will be. We both will. But the world doesn't let go of scandals so easily. A week after we left, my phone buzzed with messages and missed calls. The headlines were brutal. Business tycoon's wife abandons family home amid rumors of affair with stepson. Richard's statement to the press was cold and calculated. I am focusing on moving forward, he had said, his tone heavy with implied betrayal. I stared at the article, my heart sinking. No matter how far we ran, the world would never forget what we had done. Zachary found me on the porch later that evening, the tablet with the article still in my lap. You can't let them control you, he said firmly, sitting beside me. It's not just about me, I replied, my voice trembling. It's about you too. They'll never stop judging us. Let them, he said, his gaze steady. They don't matter. What matters is what we have. I looked at him, his face lit by the soft glow of the porch light, and for the first time, I let myself believe that he might be right. As the weeks turned into months, we began to carve out a new life. It wasn't easy. The whispers followed us wherever we went, and there were days when the guilt threatened to consume me. But Zachary was always there, his presence a constant reminder that I wasn't alone. One evening, as we sat by the fire, he looked at me and smiled. I don't regret it, he said simply. Regret what? I asked, though I already knew. Any of it, he replied. Leaving, fighting, choosing you. I smiled faintly, the weight on my chest lifting just a little. I don't either.